So my name is Sean Kosofsky. I'm the Executive Director for the Climate Advocacy Lab. Super excited to have everyone here today. For most of you, you pretty much know this already, but the Climate Advocacy Lab helps build the climate community's grassroots power through evidence-based advocacy. And I'm super excited to have two awesome board members of the Climate Advocacy Lab with us today to help ask questions of Secretary Granholm. First is Lisa Hoyos, Senior Director of Climate Strategy at the League of Conservation Voters. Say hello, Lisa.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. And also Kaya Chatterjee, Executive Director of US Climate Action Network, is also here. Say hello, Kaya.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
And we also have Rebecca Tamaru with us on tech. She's a program lead for the Climate Advocacy Lab. If you have any questions with the technology, message Rebecca and she'll take care of that for you. I'm so excited today to introduce U.S. Secretary of Energy Jennifer M. Granholm. She is a trailblazer and only the second woman to lead the U.S. Department of Energy. Secretary Granholm is helping America achieve President Biden's goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050 by advancing cutting-edge clean energy technologies, creating millions of good-paying union clean energy jobs, and building an equitable clean energy future. Secretary Granholm will also oversee the Department of Energy's core missions of promoting American leadership in scientific discovery, maintaining the nuclear deterrent, and reducing nuclear danger, and remediating the environmental harms caused by legacy defense programs. Secretary Granholm and I met a long time ago when I was a civil rights activist in Michigan, and she was running to become the first woman elected Attorney General of Michigan, which of course she won, and then went off to become the first woman elected governor of the state of Michigan. A warm welcome to you today, Secretary Granholm. We know you're incredibly busy and you have a lot of places you could be, and that you've chosen to join us is a delight. So thank you so much for being here. Do you have any opening comments before we dive into the questions?
Yeah, well, let me say a few things. First of all, Sean, what a treat to be on with you and your great leadership. I've known you for over 20 years, as you described. So and for everybody on this, Sean has been such a fierce warrior and advocate and is such an incredible organizer. And I'm so happy to, both for Michigan and now his perch in California, but the issues and causes that he has fought for have really have moved me, but certainly have moved millions of people. And I'm so glad that this climate cause is your center of being at the moment. So thanks for the invitation, and to all of you who are on here who also are advocates for addressing climate change. I did want to say a word about especially this initial focus of this administration, because it is our moment. We finally have all of the players and the pieces in place to wage a full-out war on the climate crisis. We want to be able to make sure that we kickstart this clean energy transformation and really kick it over the goalposts. We want to build a more inclusive and equitable society as we're doing that. And the opening salvo, of course, in this is the American Jobs Plan. We have such a sense of urgency because we have now, I want to say, I was just looking, I have it on my calendar every single day, how many days are left. 953 days, if you exclude weekends, in this administration, that we're guaranteed to be able to make this happen. So our hair is on fire. And this American Jobs Plan, which he has come out of the starting gate with, is really amazing. You probably know that it pours hundreds of billions of dollars into clean energy technologies, into action that, obviously technologies that will get us off of fossil fuels, from electric vehicles to a modernized, reliable grid that has capacity for renewable energy, all that those clean new gigawatts that we want to add to the grid. It is really a once in a century investment. It's going to be the biggest and boldest effort to deliver climate solutions and environmental justice in our history. And because of the importance of it, we all know that failure is not an option. So we need to make sure that we get this thing onto President Biden's desk for his signature as soon as we possibly can. Obviously, that relies upon some folks in the Congress, and hopefully we can bring them across. And many of you have allies or contacts on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, you will have them on the Democratic side, but you may also on the Republican side, and we need as many votes as we possibly can get it. So before you ask me the questions that I know are on tap, I'm asking you to stay active and to stay loud and to give everything that you can to hold your government and your elected officials accountable on climate action, and that they know, make sure that they know that passing this American Jobs Act is an absolute priority. So let's do this. Let's keep our sense of urgency about us. And with that, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Love that energy. First question comes from Andrea McGinsey and Justin Rolfe Redding. Justin's part of the lab team and Andrea is at Environment America. So we sort of smushed their two questions together because they're sort of similar. Burning fossil fuels in our transportation sector is the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions in the country. If we are going to transition all light and medium duty vehicles to being powered by electricity, how many chargers do we need to get on the ground? How much will it cost? And how do we finance it? And how fast can we make it happen? And then, as if those weren't enough questions, how will the Department of Energy help ensure that this is done equitably, so that lower income communities, communities of color, and those living in apartment buildings also have convenient charger access?
Okay, so we're beginning to answer those questions, obviously, and we're doing this in partnership with the Department of Transportation, who is going to be ensuring, at least on the national highways, that we have an electrified highway system. The American Jobs Plan, just so that you know, puts $174 billion into investment to win the market for electric vehicles. And we'll use that money to build this national network. It's 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations by 2030. And we want to do it while promoting strong labor standards, making sure with project labor agreements that unions are involved, strong training, obviously installation standards that are more uniform so that we don't have a patchwork of chargers across the country. We at the Department of Energy, we already provide technical assistance and we already provide training and data and analysis and tools basically to state and local governments who are looking to develop smart and strategic deployment plans on these EV charging stations. And that'll of course continue in this effort. But we also want to replace 50,000 diesel transit vehicles, and we want to electrify at least 20% of our yellow school bus fleet, which would set us on the path, we hope, to 100% clean buses. And it will also address, of course, a major source of toxic pollution in environmental justice communities. And it will ensure that the American workforce as well is trained to operate and maintain this 21st century infrastructure with the $100 million that the administration has, $100 billion, that the administration has put in for training purposes. The funds that are scheduled to focus on electrification will also electrify the federal automotive fleet, including the Postal Service trucks. We want to make sure that we lead by example in the federal government. So our purchase of all things that will be clean energy and efficiency will help to create a market in this country for products that we may have lost in the global competition, but also for products that we are going to use ourselves to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And then on top of those investments, we're going to make sure that we do create these well-paying union jobs by investing in the manufacturing of those products, from batteries to the vehicles themselves. Those investments are also in the American Jobs Plan. And we want to make sure, as I mentioned, that we do this in an equitable fashion. And that is a very top priority for DOE and for this administration, obviously. Personally, at DOE, I've hired an advisor for equity, Shalonda Baker, who is helping us to ensure that our programs are designed to provide access for low-income communities and communities of color. But at the heart of the American Jobs Plan is this Justice 40 initiative, which is making sure that 40% of the benefits from the investments in clean energy and in infrastructure go to disadvantaged communities. That includes investments in electric vehicles and investments in manufacturing more broadly. So we want to make sure those jobs are flowing to communities that have been disproportionately negatively affected by climate change and by pollution.
Excellent. Lisa has our next question.
Thank you, Secretary Granholm. This question is from Glenn Brand of Solar United Neighbors. He asks, are you familiar with the 30 million solar homes plan? And what is the administration's specific action plan to support great adoption of both rooftop and community solar?
Oh, I love this question because we've just got to put the pedal to the metal. So first of all, for everybody, today solar supplies about 3% of our nation's electricity, and we want to get that to 30 or even 50% of the nation's supply, which would mean adding hundreds of gigawatts of solar capacity. And obviously you can do that, and we'll be doing that at the utility scale, but we also want to do it at the community level, at the individual level. So thank you to the big initiative on 30 million solar homes. We are excited about this because if you look at the manufacturing plans as well as the effort to try to get more distributed energy resources on the grid, a single gigawatt equals 200,000 solar equipped homes. So we're talking about millions of solar panels. And you know, if you note as well, Americans build or they replace the roofs of about 3.3 million homes every year. And that offers the potential to add another 30 gigawatts of solar every year. So one way to spur adoption is to push the price of solar down to make it irresistible. So last month, DOE announced a very ambitious new target to cut the cost of solar energy by another 60% within the next 10 years. And that would make solar the cheapest source of electricity generation in America. It's already super cheap, but it would set the stage for solar to supply that 30 to 50% of our nation's electricity, which of course allows us to reach this goal that President Biden has of 100% clean electricity by 2035, and of course 50% net carbon zero by 2050. And it allows us to get there faster. But we don't want just any old solar. We especially want to give more American families and businesses and communities access to this rooftop and community option, because that is true energy independence. And of course, it will bring their utility bills down as well. Shalonda Baker, who I just mentioned, who is director of energy justice in the department, often says that solar is a core form of energy justice for communities that have been too often left behind. Our own, at DOE, our own National Community Solar Partnership is also aiming to expand access to community solar to every American household by 2025. And that means powering homes with solar regardless of whether they can get their own panels on their rooftops. We want to help to fund that, to supply that, to make it easy for people to do it. Obviously, it's a two-way street. We provide technical assistance, and communities, particularly low and moderate income communities, help to learn about and address the barriers that they face to adoption. And of course, we're looking for ways to promote community and solar rooftop in the American Jobs Plan. So please feel free to weigh in with your ideas. We're also asking our Loan Programs Office in the Department of Energy to think through ways of providing low-cost access to solar as well. So we're trying on a whole slew of different vectors to make sure that we reach that goal of providing every home with access to affordable solar.
Thank you.
Kay is up next.
Thank you so much, Secretary Granholm. The next question comes from Reverend Michael Malcolm, another great activist from the community, and builds on what you were talking about in terms of energy bills. So what is the administration doing to address excess energy burdens? Will there be a national program to address weatherization that will include renters and owners? or single and multifamily households? If there is a program on the horizon, how are you planning to distribute the investments to ensure equity throughout the supply chain?
Yeah, great questions, really important questions. Many of you are aware that we have a program called our Weatherization Assistance Program at the federal government, which I think is the government's largest whole home retrofit program. And this year, those Weatherization Assistance Program funds can be used to pay up to $3,800 or so per residence for eligible cost-effective renewable energy systems. Colorado and Puerto Rico have already used funds, just as an example, from that program for solar photovoltaic installations. Minnesota, I think, is currently piloting a project along the same lines, so that's really great. But we are looking to achieve a major expansion of this weatherization program with the American Jobs Plan, and that is going to increase the availability of grants throughout to communities that most need it. And it's going to provide more funding broadly all the way across the country. We're going to obviously, in this administration, because of its focus and commitment on justice, on environmental justice, making sure that they're increasing access to renewable power in frontline communities as well. But this issue of the cost of power and making sure we can get the utilities on board in ensuring that people can access cheap and free power from wind or solar, that is our mission here at the Department of Energy. And we really want solar not to be seen as this sort of middle-class thing. We want it to be available and accessible in every pocket of the country, but particularly in communities that have been left behind and that can see their bills reduced as a result.
Thank you so much for that. Next question is from me. This is from Anthony Torres with ASO Communications. You have talked a lot about creating good jobs and building out the clean energy economy. How do you plan to use DOE programs to create union jobs with family supporting wages and benefits and ensure that those jobs include people who are not well represented in the energy workforce?
Yeah, this is a great question too. I love these questions. I mean, when you think about this, I mean, Shauna, you and I come from a state, Michigan, which is a manufacturing state, right? And we have as a nation, we have bowed to the altar of low cost globally. And we've basically, as a result, given away our manufacturing backbone as a nation. And the American Jobs Plan really is this administration's way of saying, enough. We're going to build the means to our own energy security in this country. And we're going to give people the ability to be trained and to have those jobs. And truly, because we're going to make things in America, and this energy sector requires such a spate of products that will reduce carbon emissions, it's a huge opportunity. When you think about it, globally, there is going to be a $23 trillion demand for products that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, because all of these countries are now in the Paris Accord. All of them are making commitments to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and all of them are going to need products that allow them to meet their goals. And whether it is, wind turbines or solar panels or the supply chains for those, whether it's batteries for electric vehicles or batteries for storage, or the research and development that's going into next generation of batteries. As an aside, I say this because an entity within DOE called ARPA-E, the Advanced Research Projects Agency on Energy, they are developing a battery that is a dirt battery for utility scale storage. There's all sorts of new stuff happening. Hydrogen is being in huge demand in Europe. All of this stuff requires jobs. Pipelines need to be built for hydrogen. There is technology that's being attached to industrial processes to reduce CO2. That technology, that equipment has to be manufactured somewhere. I mean, who's going to make the polycrystalline silicon, the ingots? I mean, we can't just assume that all of the countries that have cornered the market on these products are going to continue to do so. So bottom line is, when we invest in that infrastructure, the government, the American people through the government, we employ contractors, private contractors, for example, on infrastructure to pave the roads and building the bridges or putting up the transmission systems. And that gives us the opportunity to be super targeted in who we work with and the ability to require prevailing wages in those contracts. So Davis-Bacon, making sure that those are in the contracts that the government is funding, making sure that we have that prevailing wage, making sure there's the opportunity for workers to join a union. At DOE, we just created an Office of Energy Jobs to ensure that every funding opportunity that we put out, every grant that we award has the highest possible potential to create good paying union jobs. We formed a labor working group that puts us in regular conversation with major unions around our efforts, and they have already shown us, these unions, how these targeted hiring goals in project labor agreements, that they serve as proven strategies to employ a workforce that looks like America, and that includes access for all Americans. The bottom line is, as the president says, and you've seen some of these great commercials out, climate change and is jobs in America with the right policies and the right inputs, and it means jobs for, you know, all kinds of people. Actually, there was a Georgetown study that was out at the end of last week that said that 90% of the jobs that would be created as a result of the American Jobs Plan, 90% of them would be for people who have who have high school degrees. That's it. And above, but you don't have to have a college degree for these jobs. So it's super exciting in terms of opportunity for good paying jobs all across the country, but particularly in communities that have been left behind.
Excellent. Lisa?
Yeah, you've touched on some of these issues, but this is more in the space of building efficiency. So the question is from David Takahashi of Green Faith. He says, I know the administration is seeing infrastructure and grid modernization as priorities. I'm wondering if building energy efficiency and the enduring, well-paying jobs that this can create will put our unemployed back to work, which you've been addressing, and possibly cut our GHG emissions by 10%. There are 139 million existing residences in the US and 5.6 million commercial buildings, and the cheapest kilowatt is the one that we don't use.
Amen. Of course. Energy efficiency is such an essential component of our overall strategy, right, at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It is the biggest opportunity for job creation. And of course, the president is putting a huge amount of money where his mouth is on this as well. You know, residential and commercial buildings use 40% of the nation's energy, about 75% of its electricity, and an even greater share of the peak electricity demand. And that generates about 35% of US CO2 emissions. So we've got to lower those numbers if we're going to meet these robust goals that the president has. And so DOE is going to be at the forefront of scaling up these emerging technologies that are going to put Americans to work in construction and skilled trades and engineering to build this new American infrastructure and clean energy economy. And of course, while supporting the workers that have been affected by the energy transition. I just was briefed. I've only been in my job like about a month, and within the first like 10 days, I was briefed by our buildings agency within the Department of Energy that's looking at the technologies that are next generation technologies that are cool for buildings, like the building integrated solar, the building integrated technologies that will be both energy efficient as well as clean energy generating both at once. We've already got the skilled, we've got the skilled training on the books. We got these workforce education training programs that support the building energy codes. But what we really want to do is to get the advanced energy codes adopted in every city and state across the country. I hope that there will be, in the final bill that comes out through the American Jobs Plan, I hope there will be incentives in there for states and cities to adopt these next generation building codes to make sure that those efficient goals can be met. Our Department of Energy labs are really have really dived deep into the research and development of projects that are going to help us to build and renovate more rapidly and even less intrusively than ever, so that you don't necessarily always have to open your door to people who are coming knocking saying that we want to make your place more efficient, with your permission, of course, but not as intrusively. So, you know, the American Jobs Plan for the investments in buildings, it's going to increase, as I mentioned before, the size of the weatherization assistance program, and it also sets aside $10 billion to modernize federal buildings, which will make them obviously more sustainable and resilient. And it establishes a $27 billion clean energy and sustainability accelerator that will enlist union building trade workers and retrofitting workers, people who will be retrofitting both residential and commercial and municipal buildings. And of course, it puts billions more to work making public school buildings more energy efficient, has hundreds of billions of dollars in energy efficient and building new homes under the Department of Housing and Urban Development, where Secretary Fudge is. So it's just really an amazing bill that addresses this issue of efficiency as well as jobs.
Excellent. I think we only have time for one more, and I think we're going to change up the order a little bit. Kaya, actually, would you mind asking Kristen's, jumping ahead? And then
Absolutely. So the next question is from Kristen Mitchell with American College of Physicians. And she says, I live in Alaska where the evidence of climate change is clear in our wildfire seasons, erosion from sea level rise, and stress on our fishing resources. What is your vision for an energy transition for Alaska, a state that depends so heavily on the oil and gas industry for jobs and for funding the state economy?
Yeah, it is. I fully appreciate the challenge here in Alaska. On the one hand, there are so many remote and island communities that face some of the highest energy costs and are also the most vulnerable to energy disruptions and natural disasters. And on the other hand, of course, many Alaskans depend on fossil fuels for their livelihood. I will say you have one of the only places in the nation that is 100% powered by renewable energy, which is Kodiak Island, powered by hydro. For those of you who don't know about it, it's a definite source of pride for Alaska and for the people who live there. But we want to address the needs of both groups, of both those who you know, have some of the highest energy costs, as well as those who depend on fossil fuels for their livelihood. And note that Alaska has so many resources, you know, tidal, wave power, which, by the way, Senator Murkowski has been a big advocate of using offshore wind, huge resources there. And so we want to address all of those needs and have programs that and offices that are working to support various Alaskan communities as they transition. So, for example, DOE has a water power technologies office, as well as an office of Indian energy, which have partnered to replace the diesel generators with river current tidal, you know, or wave power energy converters. And the Energy Transitions Initiative, which is a partnership, it's a project which is focused on building community-based partnerships and leveraging our national labs to support energy resiliency in remote and islanded communities. And then our Office of Energy Jobs is going to work to ensure opportunities for clean energy are available to Alaskan workers, along with workers nationwide. So in the coming weeks, we're going to announce the remote and island communities competitively selected to bolster their energy infrastructure. So look for that. We based it upon those who could reduce the risk of outages and certainly improve their future economic outlook. Alaska is an amazing poster child state for so many clean resources that it's super exciting that you, I mean, you know this because you live there, but for those who don't, that you should keep your eye on Alaska for finding the solutions to our transition from a fossil fuel economy to one that is powered by 100% clean energy, because there's so much there to love. And I know we're over. I'm sorry I went over a little bit, and I know everybody has, you know, we had a hard stop, but I just want to say thank you so much, Sean, and to team for allowing me to come and join you, and for the work that you are doing and that you will be doing. I'm anticipating to get this American Jobs Plan passed so that we can really not just talk about our clean energy future, but actually be part of it and live it. So thank you so much.
Thanks for making the time today. Thank you everyone for joining. We want to be respectful of your time. Thanks for doing this. Maybe we'll do more later in the year, but have a wonderful day, and we'll have a recording for everyone later. Thank you, everyone.